Welcome to another episode of HITalks podcast. I'm your host, Syed, the podcast where we chat with business leaders and industry experts about their success stories to help you craft yours. Today, we have Randi Wallace, one of the finest HR leaders in Canada, who has experience working coast to coast in Canada and also globally with top firms like Lululemon, Normative, HelloFresh, and currently at Jobber. She has helped over thousands of candidates in various industries over a span of many, many years to find jobs and navigate their careers. So I'm truly honored for her to join me today on this podcast. Randy, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. Appreciate the intro. Very warm welcome. I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine as well. Thank you once again for joining. I have a few rapid fire questions to break the ice, and then we'll dive into the main part about this podcast. So let's start with your favorite vacation spot.
Yes. Traveling is a huge passion of mine. So it's really hard to narrow it down to one. But actually, earlier this year, I had the opportunity to travel around Australia for a month. First time in Australia, also my first time solo traveling. So it was a really special trip. So Sydney definitely made it to the top of my list. I think there's always like that bucket list of seeing the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So that's definitely at the top for me now.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Australia. A lot of people compare it to Canada as, which a lot of things are similar. Did you find it same thing in your observation in terms of landscape and standard of living and all those type of things? Or was it you found anything different that from us?
Yeah, similar culture, I would say, like very friendly, very approachable, very safe. But like Canada, if it wasn't freezing cold all the time and had a lot of beautiful beaches. So that would be the main difference, I would say.
That's a big, big difference.
Exactly.
And what about your favorite book that you are currently reading or have read?
Yeah. So I love fantasy books. For me, reading is about engaging your imagination. And I think, although it's cliche of me, my favorite series of all time would be the Harry Potter or Aragon series, because that really like kicked off my love of reading when I was younger. But for like a more functional book, so we're trying to learn things here, the Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart book. That's one I read recently. Absolutely loved it. It's completely applicable to anyone. It kind of teaches you a lot about, why we feel the way we feel and how you can kind of like learn that or use that information to adjust like how you react to your emotions.
So it's probably in a nutshell, really target towards emotional intelligence and all those type of areas.
Yes, 100%. And she does like a lot of research too. So it's very research based.
Nice. I mean, Harry Potter, I don't know if nowadays people connect to that, but people who have grown up in the 90s, that's like, I think that probably is one of those books that made a lot of people get into reading, because of the stories and I mean, I was a big fan of their movies, never got into the books, but I can imagine a lot of people say the books are way better than the movies. So
I might date myself, but I definitely listened to the audiobooks on cassette tapes.
No way.
There was like
That's
16
crazy.
per book. So yeah, definitely one of the faves.
Crazy. And what about favorite cuisine?
Cuisine, yeah. Along with my love of travel, love all things food as well.
Of course.
I think probably the best food I've had is when I was traveling in Singapore.
Nice.
The reason being is kind of like a melting pot of a lot of different types of cuisines. So like anywhere you go can be like a completely different experience. And yeah, there's just so many incredible spots there. So that probably is at the top for me.
Yeah, no, because I went to Singapore, I think in March, and I think you're probably referring to the Arab Street and then the Little India, and they have like too many one
Yes,
spot that you can walk across.
exactly.
Like, yeah. No, I was there too, Turkish food, and then within like span of one couple streets, you can probably travel the world with different cuisines.
Exactly.
What about, so if you had a chance to have a dinner with a popular figure, who would that be? And
Yes, hands down, Mariska Hargitay. So she plays Olivia Benson on Law & Order SVU. I've watched that show for years. I know it sounds like odd to say grow up watching that show, but I did. And I think she's just really inspiring. So she does like a lot of work with supporting survivors of assault. And she launched this foundation called the Joyful Heart Foundation, which exists solely to support survivors. And she's even like campaigned to change legislation as well. So she actually updated the Violence Against Women Act. So I think she's just like, I like when celebrities have like positive impact. And so I think she's done a lot of work within that and continues to. So I just find her very inspiring.
well, I should check that out. I had no idea, but no, that's I love these type of, because when you get certain status in life and you don't give back in this way, it's like, why did you? work that hard.
Exactly.
But
You're
I mean,
wasting it.
yeah, yeah. So no, this is super amazing. So Randy, let's dive into you now. I know you had a chat previously and we sat down and we discussed a lot of things, and I found few areas that I wanted to really dive in your life that I felt like would be really helpful for the audience, especially who are, trying to navigate their careers in Canada and whatnot. So I know you started as accounting assistant, which is not completely, but it's a different field than who you are today. So how did you decide to switch to HR, and what inspired that transition?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I'll start off with saying I think one of like the biggest disservices we do to young people is make them decide what their career path is at 18 years old, because you have no idea at that time, and you can also change it so many times. So I think, when I went into school, I did marketing, and I really did it for no other reason than it was like one of the big three. It was really sold to me as like, you have to do marketing, finance, accounting in order to be successful. And HR wasn't really sold to me as like an avenue of career pathing. So I never even considered it. And I think like a lot of people, I stumbled into a career in HR. So working for Lululemon, I was in a lot of like people focused positions, and the environment in general was very people focused. And what I realized is there's such a benefit behind being a part of an organization that takes care of its people and really develops those people processes. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the HR world, and also realized like the huge impact it can have, and also realized just like what types of careers there are out there in HR, because I'd never really been exposed to it before. So I think it was just through kind of like trial and error, and like kind of just like going through my career and discovering what I'm good at, and realizing that there really is like a huge amount of career pathing within HR.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Like I remember being in high school, and there's not much like in terms of you're asked to you want to go post secondary, and you're asked to choose courses like in grade 11 and 12 that would design your whole life, like with which type of major you will select. And I mean, we have guidance counselors and stuff, but it's just a little bit hard. Like I don't know if they have much HR courses. I remember finance and different ones, but yeah, I don't remember. There were leadership courses, but nothing specific to HR, which is kind of like when you're navigating at that stage, you don't know which. Yeah, you're right. It's just trial and error. And I think for me, it was the same thing. I did economics and finance, and then I mean, I always wanted to do business, but I never knew it would be in HR. My first role, I just stumbled upon HR, and then still to this day. I
Exactly.
know in terms of, you helped launch Lululemon in UK, which must have been a significant challenge and learning experience, obviously. What insight you can share with us in terms of lessons you have learned doing obviously you had a team in place and all that, but it's still a huge task to undergo in a new country and all that. So I would love to kind of like get some insights and lessons that you have learned from this experience of yours.
Yeah, definitely. I love speaking about my experience in the UK with Lululemon, because I think it was really pivotal to a lot of the things I do now. So, I mean, Lululemon, as most people will know, is like a very established brand in Canada. So, we could put out any product, we could post any role, and you're instantly going to get interest. Whereas when we launched in the UK, especially when I was there, the brand was brand new. So we had absolutely no brand recognition, and we had no employment branding either. So it really kind of changed my perspective on a lot of what we did. Everything that we were doing at Lululemon in Canada was actually no longer relevant in the new environment. And so we really had to like unattach from what we're doing, and like attracting talent had to be different, marketing products had to be different, interacting with customers had to be different. So I learned a lot of like great lessons. And to sum up like what I really learned through that, like the first one is like question the way things are done. I think sometimes, like, especially in companies, we get really caught up with like, okay, this is the way it's always been done, so we're going to keep doing it that way. But there might be a better way of doing things. So I think now carrying forward, I'm always questioning why I do things, always looking to see if there's a better way, because, the world's constantly evolving and changing, and we kind of have to do that as well and not get stuck in the status quo. The next one is it's okay to fail. I think nothing that exists today is the first iteration, so sometimes you need to try something new. Sometimes you have to fail and try again, and really learn to develop that error management mindset and really become like a learner, and be okay with like making mistakes and trying again, because that's the way things are built. And then the last one, maybe like more a personal learning. And I'll preface this by saying it's rooted in a lot of privilege to be able to do this. But I think if you have the ability, go live somewhere you're not from. I think, removing yourself from your environment and your support systems and exposing yourself to new cultures and ways of living, so valuable in like a personal and professional standpoint. And again, I know that's privilege. Not everyone has that opportunity. But I think, like I said, if you do, it's definitely something you should explore.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's like you had experience of opening a startup and also you were starting up your own, personally also a startup project and all in professional setting because I mean, your Lululemon is very big here, as you have said, like anything you do is super, like it's just brand recognition is so strong. But I assume in London in UK, it's just like a new company where not many people know about it, and it's just like having a new company. And then you are also going through a phase where you don't know this country that much, the cultural dynamics and all that. So in terms of personally speaking, what are some areas that you grew, that you can share with the listeners who you're encouraging to go and kind of like get out of the comfort zone and do these type of activities? What would they learn that they won't be able to do it here at home if they go out somewhere?
Yeah, I think you learn to have a lot of like faith and confidence in yourself. I think, when you're really out of your comfort zone and like I said, you don't have those like support systems, you really learn what you're capable of. And I think, you can obviously do that where you're from. And there's a lot of ways of like pushing your comfort zone. But I think that's like a crash course in learning what you're capable of because everything's brand new. And then it also teaches you, where your mindset is limiting you. I think, I'm originally from Calgary, beautiful place to grow up. And also the way or the people I grew up with all had like a similar mindset and a similar perspective and grew up under very similar circumstances. And it wasn't until I really stepped away from that I learned, just how limiting that viewpoint can be. And then also, how much benefit you can get from expanding that mindset and considering other perspectives.
Well, that makes sense because kind of like, again, you grow with more exposure, you get to learn more, and probably in times of weakness that you get to know yourself more, and the more confidence you get, you come back and you're able to pick up higher challenges and all that. Now, again, in your life, you pivoted again from retail into software, right? So it's similar, I think, in your early days, which I like it because you trial and tested many things, and I think that's probably one of the biggest reason you achieving your goals today. So let's talk about that transition because I have a lot of people in our field. We get so many we meet so many people who are trying to transition from X field to Y field, and they're always scared and in the aspects of transition. So I want to take this moment when you're switching from these two areas of being in retail space and then switching to completely it's a different type of marketing and software. What were the most challenging aspects of this transition, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, great question. So I guess before I jump into that, I want to touch on one thing you said there about, making all these different transitions has contributed to my success. And I think that's so true. And anyone listening to this who's like considering shift, like take the risk. And like it is scary and it's hard and like it might not work out the way you planned it to, but you will get so much out of it. And every risk that I've taken, I've been terrified of, and it's always made me better. So I just wanted to like throw that in there because you highlighted it. And I think, yeah, it's something I definitely like believe strongly in. But yeah, coming back to your question, I think, that most challenging aspect of that transition from retail to more of like a traditional corporate tech environment was really in the limiting beliefs that a lot of folks hold around retail being a low skill career path. I think I don't believe in that. I think I learned a lot of really valuable skills. I mean, at Lululemon, I was taught how to run a business from start to finish. I learned how to manage people, but I think there exists a bias around that. And it's really difficult to challenge people's biases when you're pivoting from one industry to another. But there were a couple of things I did that now reflecting back really helped in that transition. So the first one is to get really clear on what your transferable skill set is and learn how to communicate those. And so depending on what industry or role maybe you're trying to pivot into, directly highlight how your experience has prepared you for that position down to like the very small skill so that you're able to communicate like, hey, I know I don't come from this traditional background. I know I come from a different industry, but here's all the things that I've done that would actually benefit this company or this position or would allow me to perform this position. Yeah, because like what they're going to see on paper isn't necessarily what you're actually going to bring to the table. So get really clear on what your transferable skill set is. And the second piece is like focus your efforts on networking, especially when you're transitioning out of an industry. Like I said, submitting resumes is not going to do it because it's not telling the full story. You're really going to have to focus on making those connections in people, in the roles that you want to be in the companies you want to work for, in the industry you're trying to pivot into, not just from a point of view of like making those connections to get an in, but to learn about their experiences. When I was pivoting out, I connected with so many folks in HR, heard how they took so many different turns to get where they are. And it gave me a lot of confidence that it was possible to make that kind of transition, and also gave me so many different avenues that I could take as well. So I think, collect as much information and make as many connections and network as best you can.
Amazing. And I want to touch on this later on in terms of networking, because a lot of people, they struggle with, like, it's easier to do these. I mean, it's easier to say these things, you are able to network and get insight, but I see, and then probably you also see a lot of people struggle with just how to network. How can we get in touch with people who can give us advice or coffee and all that stuff, which let's keep that for a little bit while, but I just want to note that thought here.
Of course, I got all sorts of ideas about that. So excited to get into it.
No, that's really important. I think that's one of the pain points, especially in today's market. In terms of, during your time at, I think, HelloFresh, you got your first TA role as a talent acquisition specialist. And I know in HR, it's so many areas that you can join. Why did you get into TA, and what drew you to this field, and how did it shape your career path today? For those, from the point of view, like people who are new and trying to get into HR and are in TA, from that perspective, I'm asking this question. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coming back to that networking piece, I honestly had no intentions of ending up in TA. My original goal was to move into like an HRBP position, like that. Even transitioning into HelloFresh was like, okay, this is a stepping stone for me to get my foot in the door, and then I want to be an HRBP. So that would be like my piece of advice is like, your next step doesn't have to be like the perfect step to like your next career. Like sometimes you do have to make a move that might not like perfectly check all the boxes, but that gives you kind of like that foot in the door and can help you kind of like explore a little bit. But in my networking, I connected with one of the senior people partners at HelloFresh. Had done that kind of just like discovery call. I just learned about her experience, made a great connection. She's actually a really good friend of mine now. And then about 6 months after I connected with her, she reached out to me about this TA position. I thought a lot about it. And I was like, TA is not for me. Like, I want to be an HRBP. I want, like I was so clear on that, but I took it because, the company really aligned with my values. And it was a really great experience too. In that, I completely fell in love with TA. I find it so fulfilling to support folks in finding their next career, and knowing how hard I struggled in those transitions and all the things I learned, to be able to be a part of easing that transition for some people is exactly what I want to be doing. And that would kind of like lead to my next piece of advice is like, just try something. If you don't know what your next step is, or maybe you're not sure how to get to that next step, just try something. And it might not be for you, and then you can pivot out and try something else, but you might find that you like fall in love with it, and then that ends up being your career. And now here I am years later, and I'm still so motivated by that ability to, have that impact on people's lives and their careers. And I've really grown into being like a strong recruiter, and it's something like I really enjoy, and never would have found this if I hadn't just like taken that chance and tried something different.
I mean, again, these anecdotes are easier to say. I'm pretty sure how hard you had to go through this, and even trying something new, you're so scared in terms of how it. Because every career move you make, it's like kind of like sets a stone. It makes it hard for you to make another. If you go in TA, you don't like it, then it's gonna be a little bit difficult to retract and go somewhere else. So but it takes sort of like courage to push and go ahead. I think the main point of yours would be covered in networking, how you're able to connect with these folks and make those decisions. In terms of the another thing I was thinking with TA is like sometimes I look at folks that in the course of span of my career who we help them hire, and then they're growing in different field, and you come across their LinkedIn page and you're kind of like low-key proud of them because you gave them like you know, the experience that they didn't have before as a TA, sometimes you kind of like make it easy for in terms of the personality. And there's so many things when you hire, people in different fields. But when I come across those folks who are not, I would say 10 out of 10, but we still give them a chance, and now they're really doing well in their field. You go like, oh, my guess actually worked out. The good feel I had about this person.
Exactly. And I think that's like what makes me love recruiting so much, because there were so many people that gave me a chance when I was
Yeah.
not a 10 out of 10. And so like, you really got to pay it forward. And yeah, to your point, it's so nice to see folks who like you were contributing to like their future success in a career. So yeah,
Yeah, the
definitely very
feeling is
fulfilling.
so different. I think only another recruiter or someone in this field can understand. I know Jobber was recently recognized as 7th best place to work in Canada by Great Place to Work, which is a remarkable achievement. From your perspective, what are the everyday practices do you think have played a key role in earning this recognition?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm very passionate about talking about the jobber environment because I think it has a lot of unique things to offer and why it's been so highly recognized. A couple of things that I think are a really big selling factor for our culture is recognition and feedback. So it's really core to a lot of the things that we do here. And we have a lot of different avenues to provide feedback and recognition. And so the feedback piece provides a lot of growth and development. And, as a recruiter, every conversation I have about, what are you looking for in your next position, or what are you not getting in your current position, always comes down to that growth piece. And I think that's what folks really want now. They want a long-term opportunity where they really feel like they can develop and grow. And Jobber offers that. We have like professional career coaches. We, a lot of programs to develop leadership skills, and we're growing a lot. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow with us as well. And so I definitely think that's one piece of it. And then the recognition, like a fun little program we have a program called Jabloons. And so it's a way that you can actually recognize your fellow peers. And, when they do something that aligns with our values or that you found was really supportive, you can actually gift them with Jabloons. And they're kind of like credit card points. So you get some every month that you get to gift. And then, after time, you can actually like buy yourself something with it. So yeah, I think, it's a small little thing, but it's in a public Slack channel too. So everyone gets to see this recognition. It's very public. And it really encourages you to kind of like live within that type of culture of recognition and feedback as well. So I think that's one piece. And I think another piece of it, and it really comes down to our mission. And if you've ever looked at Jobber's website or explored our product at all, we're really passionate about impacting small business owners. And I think in the complicated nature of what the world is, I think it's rare to work for a company where you feel like you're having a positive impact on the world. And really in the day-to-day a Jobber, I see that every day. Like I'm not in a customer facing position, but I understand how what I do contributes back to that mission. And that's something I think really contributes to us being recognized as well, is that the people who work for us and interact with our brand really feel like they have a greater purpose. And it's not just about showing up to your 9 to 5. It's about contributing to the community, to the economy, to like impacting these small business owners as well. And so I would say, yeah, that recognition and feedback and that ability to really have like a tangible impact on people.
Oh, that's amazing. I love the concept of jabloons because I feel like I mean, you correct me, that probably helps you, overall jobber to gel the team nicely and, everyone to go towards a common goal, which is takes a lot of time and effort. And here people are rewarding each other, peers and all that, which is fantastic. I saw also that, there are many exciting roles open from the candidate perspective for those who are looking to apply for, join a top rated company like Jobber. What would you say the qualities and attributes the you guys look for, and what should the new applicants can be, what can they learn from this answer that if this company is a good fit for them, and what type of application they should, tailor to help get a role at Jobber?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, obviously, there's the side of like the alignment of your technical skill set with
Of
whatever
course.
position. So, I won't speak to that because it's very role specific. But in general, certain like attributes that we look for, the first one's coachability. And so, kind of coming back to like that feedback and recognition piece I was talking about, feedback's such a big part of the day to day at Jobber. And we really look for folks who have that learning and growth mindset and that are really hungry for feedback and really able to be coachable and can learn and develop. We really believe that, there's always something that we don't know. And I think that's made Jobber really successful. I mean, from the small interactions every day to like even how our product has iterated over time, is that we're open to changing things. And so we look for folks who have that similar mindset. So, in the interview process, in the screening, in the job application questions, really making it clear that that's something that you value, and demonstrating that through examples as well. We always ask, when's the last time you got feedback and how did you adapt to it? So coming with those specific examples is a great way to stand out in our interview process. And then also coming back to that like piece, it's really important that folks that come through our process feel connected to our mission of supporting small business owners. So, what I always suggest is like go through our website. We even have a YouTube channel, and so many customer testimonials. We're really big at like releasing like real examples of how we've impacted people's lives. So if you can come prepared to speak to, how that has influenced your decision to want to work for Jobber, or, maybe a personal quip about, your father owned a small business, you can understand the value or the product would have provided to them. Just finding some kind of connection back to that mission, because that's such a big part of what we do. And we really want people to feel connected to it and like they want to contribute as well.
Yeah, and then, I mean, it's an amazing niche too, right? Because small businesses, it's probably like 90+% of Canadian businesses are in this category, which is our backbone. I would feel a noble work if someone is. I mean, I'm a small business, so I understand the ups and downs. So anyone who's supporting it, love it. I know I've been recently a girl dad as well, so that's why I saw that you are involved in Monday Girl, which is the organization that I've been following, but unfortunately I cannot be part of. But I know a lot of the young they've been doing amazing work supporting next gen women leaders, and when I think about my daughter, I feel like that's a pathway I want her to take. So this is why I was asking this advice for her in future. If this recording exists, you can watch it, or and obviously other ladies, other women who are young and who are trying to be aspiring to be leaders. What advice would you give to those young women in order to unlock their full potential? What should they be doing, and what are you learning from joining a community like Monday Girl?
Yeah, definitely. The main thing I've really learned in being part of this community and just in like my journey in general, is that empathy is really a superpower. When I worked for Lululemon, most of our leadership team were female identifying. I think something like 80% of Lululemon's leadership is female. So I think I had a very narrow view because I worked with so many amazing female leaders and they cared so deeply about their people and really led through empathy and created space for everyone to really be their unique selves and share their unique perspectives. And then when I transitioned out of this environment into more of like the corporate tech world, I quickly realized that there are other attributes that were, more closely associated with leadership and not to overly generalize, but characteristics that are stereotypically more male attributes. So you think, like assertiveness, strength, anger, like those things were actually like celebrated in leadership. And attributes like empathy and compassion and kindness were almost seen as a weakness and that leaders should avoid. And I watched a lot of like female leaders like silence this part of themselves to kind of like fit that mold into like a typical leadership position. And what I would say is like the world's changing a lot and we're gaining a new understanding of what it takes to be a good leader. And being empathetic is a really strong leadership capability. And so my advice is like, if you're looking to find yourself in leadership as a woman, like be your true authentic self and don't feel like you have to fit in to some kind of like stereotype of what leadership should be. And I think there's so much to offer and like your personal values and your strengths and sharing with the people around you. And being a part of a community like Monday Girl, I get to see those types of leaders. So what you get out of being in a network like that is you get to see how different women shine under those different types of leadership skills. So I think, there's a lot of benefit. And that's why we say like representation matters. And if you're finding yourself in an environment where you can't really find that voice or you don't see like a strong example that aligns with the type of leader that you want to be, that's why communities like Monday Girl are there so that you can really like find that representation. And then you can talk to folks who've developed their voice as well. And it really shows you that there's different ways and different paths to become a leader.
It's fantastic. I really hope that Monday Girl, and I'm pretty sure it will, stay longer till my daughter grows up, so she can be one of those who can join such community. And I'm loving the work that they're doing, which is fantastic. Now, this is the where I want you to spend a little bit more time in networking piece of area where I see a lot of folks struggle with. And I think maybe it's because there are so many new channels to network now. You have social media, LinkedIn and all these things, which is completely different strategy. And then you go on events and all that stuff, which is completely different. I'm not sure why, but I will ask you, like, you have done it really effectively in your career. So what are some helpful tips that you can share with folks who are in job market right now, or just even if they're not in job market, networking is always good to do. So what are your some tips on that in this area?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm really passionate about this because I think when I first transitioned out of Lululemon, this was such a scary concept to me. Everyone kept saying like network, and I was like, I don't even know where to start. Like I worked at Lululemon for 8 years since I was like 18 years old. I don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah.
So I understand that like fear and how it feels like a very difficult challenge. But what I would say is like start small. Really, like there's so many different avenues. Like if you are someone that struggles with that kind of like interaction, or maybe you have some social anxiety, that's why joining network groups like Monday Girl. I'm also part of one for any HR professionals, the People group,
Nice.
because everyone is signed up there to network. So you're not going to get ghosted. People are very open and willing to have conversations. So it's a really great way of starting networking if you don't have those kind of like natural networking skills. So that would be one piece of advice. And then the second is in the approach of networking. I think a lot of people start networking as soon as they need a job, and they're going at it to be like, okay, I need an in, I need a reference, I need someone to like find me a job. And that's going to get you nowhere because people can pick up on that like ingenuine connection. And what I would say is like, network for the sake of networking. So start connecting with people, like even similar to like what I was talking about with my experience of HelloFresh. Like I didn't expect to get a job at HelloFresh. I just wanted to connect with someone and learn about their career journey. And then 6 months later, they reached out to me with an opportunity. So I think, it really comes down to your intention. So go in, learn about people's career journeys, get advice from them, even ask them for other connections as well, because, that's when people want to support you. When you're coming with that genuine interest, when you're really just there for like the sake of learning and the sake of networking. And you're going to see a lot more success through that. So that's kind of like the approach I would take. Explore other avenues like the networking groups that are available now. LinkedIn is a great resource. I mean, you and I connected over LinkedIn. We'd never met before. We just started like commenting on each other's posts, right? And then, we connected about a year ago, and now here we are collaborating on a podcast. So like, I think we had no intention of that, where it was just about like connecting with like-minded folks and learning from each other. I know it can be scary, but sometimes you just have to start and go in with that genuine intention, find different groups that are kind of open to that networking, and it makes it a lot easier.
No, I was gonna share this, how we connected, but good that you brought it up. With HelloFresh, it was also, I assume, on LinkedIn where you were able, when you asked just for a coffee chat on your career guidance type of thing. Was it also done via LinkedIn? Because I'm trying to see how effective. I mean, for me, it's been really effective, LinkedIn. So was that also this medium, or you use some other medium for that? Or those
Yeah,
type
so
of
I
medium?
actually got connected through a friend of a friend.
Okay.
So that's another thing too, especially if like LinkedIn's scary to you, because I know it can be very scary. Like use your current network, like your
100%.
siblings, your parents, like people you've worked in the past, friends. Like for me, I went to all my friends. I'm like, hey, you work at a company, they have HR. Can you put me in touch with like your HR person?
Nice.
And sometimes they'll say no, and that's fine. But, like that's a great way too, because like you have that like organic introduction as well. So they're more likely and more open to that conversation. So yeah, I just went to a friend, was like, hey, can you introduce me to one of like your people partners? I'd love to like set up a conversation. And then even every job I've got since, like, I mean, my current job and normative as well, I got through the people networking group. So I just posted that I was looking for a job and connected with someone. I've actually never submitted a resume. So I know we're going to talk about this in a bit because I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't, the most success I found in finding jobs has been through networking.
That's crazy. I mean, I was gonna ask you that because when I read the post where you said resumes can be waste of time, I think you said in the future, which I mean we have there's so many arguments on this area. There's some pro resume guy for people who are, they say resume is everything, and then there's the other side of things which you fall into. And I can't make up my mind because sometimes resume do help. Just try to get when you're screening people, just before you get on a call, you need to know a little bit. So curious to know, like, why do you think they are a waste of time?
Yeah, I mean, so I understand that you need to have a resume. I'm not saying like go into the world and don't have an up-to-date resume, but what I'm saying is don't use it as a way to get an interview because like you're not going to get a lot of success out of that. Whereas like, if you focus on networking, getting that in, then the resume is just a tool to support, like you were saying, giving that extra context, rather than a tool to like get the job in the first place. So that's why I think they're useless in terms of like getting the interview. And the reason being, and I think, it's really a product of how the job market is shifting. Like as we've seen over the last couple of years, there's a lot of folks looking for jobs. There's a lot of people laid off. And, even myself, when we post a new position, we can get like 200 applications in a short period of time. And, depending on like what your recruitment function looks like, you don't have the capacity to go through all 200 applications. So sometimes, your resume might get missed and that has nothing to do with your capabilities. We just can't get to it. But even if it is screened, it's such a 2D representation of who you are. And there's so much missing out of that story. Like when I was transitioning out of Lululemon, you looked at my resume for like a TA position in tech, there's no parallel. There's absolutely no parallel there. But when I get in front of someone and I tell my story and I talk about my transferable skill sets and I talk about my motivations and you can hear my communication skills, that's going to tell a lot better of a story than a piece of paper can. So that's why I absolutely hate resumes. And I think it also opens up to so much bias. Like at the end of the day, we all have bias. Like I have it too. I find when I'm screening resumes, I have to recognize that, but there's a lot of folks that don't. And I think, it really opens you up to being rejected through a bias and nothing to do with like your actual skill set as well. So that's why I'm super passionate about like networking over resumes. And when I look at like the future of the job search market and even like candidates who come through my process, like a lot of the times it's through like introductions and networking. I always look at their LinkedIn page. So, even if you submit a resume and I don't understand something in your resume, I'm gonna go right to your LinkedIn page. So if you invest in like that personal branding, if you invest in like posting, if you invest in like making those connections, I'm a lot more likely to invite you to that first step because I can actually like tell a little bit more of your background from your personal branding that I might not be able to get from your resume.
Yeah, no, I was gonna come to that, which like LinkedIn plays very big role, like you were saying, because it helped. I think whenever we have done, I've been in this space for 7+ years, and at that time LinkedIn was not big. Now it just helps you make a decision quicker about individual rather than resume. That I agree to for sure. Because the other side of things are people put everything on resume. When you talk to them, it's like it's not really matching up to things which they can do on LinkedIn too, but they are a little bit scared because it's public. You can't say, everything has been verified. So resume, you can, get away with many things. Let's put it that way. It makes it harder. That I agree with for sure. And you spoke about today's job market, which it's been a little bit difficult. Like you have mentioned, getting quite a few applications. Same thing on our end as well. Like you post a job and you get like, sometimes I even get thousands of resumes, which is like too much. And in this market, people are still looking for jobs. What are some strategies that you can share with job seekers? Because, it's very difficult for them to get into a field that they're looking for. I know a lot of people in my network who got laid off and they've been laid off for over 2-3 months now. And it's hard. And so in your opinion, what tips and tricks you can share with folks today to get the roles that they're looking for? And if they are not able to do it, what should they be doing in this off season to kind of like when things pick up, they should be, first in line to get a role or whatever they're looking for?
For sure. I empathize so much with folks in the job market right now. And like I was in the job market myself earlier this year and it was scary and difficult. And I know how hard it is out there right now, but I think really focusing your energies on the right thing can make a big difference. So there's like a couple things I would say, and it's a lot of what we've already said. So, first of all, focus on networking. That is going to be like your end all and be all and be able to find the right opportunities. So target people in the industries you want to be a part of, the companies you want to be a part of. Like I said, leverage those like connections, friends of family members. And even if it doesn't necessarily specifically relate to where you want to be, like I said, form those genuine connections. Like they might even be able to give you a connection somewhere else, or they might like pop up down your career path that you don't know. So like invest the time now. Because it's really going to pay off in the long run. The next one, I think, and this is something I learned pivoting out of Lululemon, is you have to remove your ego from it.
Yeah.
So I think, especially if you're in that situation of making a career transition, you have to understand that you might not be making a lateral move. And for myself, coming out of Lululemon, I was in a leadership position for about 5 years and had to pivot out into a specialist position. And now, like where I am, I'm so glad I did that because it gave me the space and time to like learn this whole new industry and learn like a whole new like job function. But at the time, it was really difficult for me to let go all of the work I'd put in to develop into a leadership position. And I'm not saying like don't have big goals and don't go for what you want. But there has to be a point in time where you realize that sometimes you might have to take an additional step that you didn't plan in order to get to where you want to go in the long run. So that would be like another piece of advice. And kind of like coming off of that, it's all about mindset too. Mental health is such a hard thing to manage when you're in the job search, and being able to like maintain that positive mindset and deal with rejection, have that resiliency is really going to be key. Because, if you get down, if you allow those rejections to reflect on who you are as a person, it's going to be impossible to keep that momentum up. So I think, like mindset and ego are two things you really need to focus on when you're in that job search. And then the third one, it kind of comes back to your like second question, like, if you are spending 3 or 4 months laid off, like what should you be doing? I think identifying where you can upskill. So whether you're transitioning out or you're staying within your industry, there's always something else you can be doing. There's so many like free resources too. Like this doesn't have to look like going back to school or taking an expensive course. LinkedIn Learning has a lot of opportunities, or, even scrolling on LinkedIn and following people who put out content related to your industry, or even on Reddit, there's a lot of like resources as well. So like focus on upskilling yourself, because even in those like interviews, being able to speak to what you've been up to really demonstrates like a strong skill set and resiliency. So being like, yeah, I've been unemployed for 4 months, but I've been doing these courses, I've learned this, here's how I'm staying up to date on trends in my industry. So kind of like treat it as if you were in a job, and continuously upskilling yourself and continuously learning as well.
Oh, this is great because, again, it's easier to say, but a lot of these things I think people should start with small steps, but eventually get there, because the other way of just being hopeless and being negative is not really going to help. So these type of having good mental positive outlook and keep doing, it's at the end of the day, you just have to, as you have said it, to start, just try to do something, rather than inaction. Action is better than inaction all the time. Okay. So in terms of, I also want to touch on industry insights from your experience a little bit that fellow HR leaders can learn and benefit from, because your experience has been very, very, I feel like it would be very valuable for them to hear. I know you have a CHRP designation. A lot of folks who are, I talk to a lot of folks who are just getting into HR and especially finishing off school and whatnot. So how effective, or how, and they debate this all the time, and that's why I asked this question. How has this designation helped you, not just with getting a job, but also in your career, like in terms of what you have learned and deployed during your role and throughout it?
Yeah, this is definitely something I get asked a lot. And what I would say is I don't think it's benefited me professionally, but it's definitely benefited me personally. So I think if your motivation specifically to leverage it to get a different position, I don't necessarily think it's needed anymore, unless of course like the job specifically calls it out. But I know a lot of really high level HR folks who don't have this certification, who have developed careers very successfully in HR. Because although I learned a lot from it, I've learned more through experience. So if your main motivation is like, this is going to help me get ahead, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the best use of your time. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. It's also a lot of money as well. So that's like a consideration as well. Yeah. What I did get out of it outside like career advancement is it was such a great experience returning to school as an adult. And so I think from like a personal point of view, like being able to learn to be a learner again, work towards something and get back to like studying. Like studying is a skill. And I think it's like benefited me in terms of like how I work too, is like doing research and like, yeah, just like that mindset around learning changed a lot for me. But I think I could have done that through any number of courses. Like it didn't have to be the CHRP certification. So like I said, if your motivation is the pursuit of learning, 100%, it's a great outlet for that. And for me too, like I was transitioning out of a different field, so I wanted to like learn more about HR. So from like knowledge's sake, it was helpful. But in terms of like having those numbers next to my name, I don't think it's contributed at all to my career growth.
So it's more of like people who are pivoting into HR with no background in HR. This could be like a crash course type of thing where you are, getting hands dirty before you jump into the field.
Exactly.
And is it difficult to do, or how's that? Is it fairly the structure of exam and all that stuff?
Yeah, I guess it depends on your learning style. Like I think I resonate quite well with like a traditional learning style. So like, just like reading textbooks, taking notes, but like some folks that's a very hard concept. So I think, yeah, it depends on your learning style. It's a lot of work. And it's a lot of time. So, if you are working full time and your job is very demanding, I went to school part time while working full time as well for quite a few years. And it was a lot. So like, I think, yeah, it depends like what your capacity is. And then also like the type of learner you are. I feel like I was just lucky to kind of identify with that type of schooling. But I know like that doesn't work for some folks. So it might be a little bit more challenging.
Interesting. And what about the HR industry outlook? Like, how do you see the future trends, with AI coming? And crazy things are happening AI is coming everywhere, but specifically for HR, what are some changes you're seeing overall, and then hit on the AI part of things? How do you see it changing? Do you think we will get replaced, or our jobs are secure? Like, what is your 2 cents?
Yes. I love that you like touched on that there. Like, do you think we're going to get replaced? Because I heard this in a podcast the other day and it's so great. It's AI is going to replace job tasks, not jobs. So I think that's like a really key distinction for me. And especially when I look at like trends in the HR industry that I'm excited about is that HR is becoming way more strategic. And I think, what you and I were saying before about like how we had no exposure to it in school. That's because it was like strictly administrative back then. Like it was about, like entering numbers. It was about like pushing pencil. Like there was no strategic nature to it. Whereas now, I think a lot of companies are realizing that like your people strategy and your business strategy have to be one and the same. And really leveraging like the HR function as a strategic business partner. And where I see like AI playing into this is it's going to take the administrative tasks off of HR professionals so that they can focus on being strategic. So that's what I say when like AI is going to replace tasks and not jobs. It might replace more of like the administrative type jobs or the administrative type tasks. But the strategic side of HR will always be there because at the end of the day, like HR is about people. So you need people in order to manage that. And so I think, that's something I'm like excited about and an extension of that. There's a huge development of HR analytics. I think in the past, HR has not been seen as like a data focused function. And, even at Job or in HelloFresh, I really got an exposure to how we can leverage analytics to build HR strategy. Like even in TA, there are so many things that we can leverage in order to be more successful. And that also like gives us a seat at the table. A lot of like decision makers want to hear numbers. They want to hear data and make decisions based off of that. So I think that's contributing to HR being more strategic because we can come with numbers, we can come with like informed decisions based off of that data. So yeah, that's kind of like the things that I'm seeing in the HR industry. And, for folks that are looking to grow in HR, pivot into HR, choose the companies that see HR strategically. That is like so key. If you join a company that sees HR as admin, you aren't going to be able to convince them otherwise. Like it's just not possible. And there's a lot of old school thinking out there like that. And that's fine. And that's the way they run their business. But I wish I'd known that sooner and really just focused on businesses that were really saw as a strategic function.
Yeah, no, and to that point, I feel like those companies, I wish them all the best, but it will be hard to sustain for a long period of time because like as they say, like the team is the company you build. There's a famous saying around that. It's all about the people in the company. That is eventually the people are building the company, not the other way around. So having, just like anything else, they have strategies for everything else. So people strategies, I think you hit home there. In terms of, I've probably seen a lot of influx of newcomers, recently coming to Canada. I mean, job market is already difficult for people who have been here for many years, but with this influx, the newcomers are facing even more harder challenges, just because obviously the cultural shock and so many other things that they go through, and then the competition from the local talent pool, right? So I mean, they're also local, but what I mean is like people who have been here for many years with no with a good understanding of Canadian culture and whatnot. So what is the tips and tricks you can give them as an HR leader? How should they integrate into Canadian job market as quickly as they can? Because obviously they're, sacrificing a lot of things to come here.
For sure. No. And I talk to a lot of folks who are new to Canada as well. And I can definitely appreciate the unique struggle it takes to, I mean, the job market, as you said, it's hard enough as is. And that's for folks who like understand the context. So coming in can be very difficult. But that's what I would say is like the first thing is, we're lucky enough to live in a time where there's so many resources at the tip of our fingers. So I think, if you're new to the Canadian market, really leverage all the resources available to you to learn the differences between, wherever your traditional experience is to what the Canadian market's like. So, follow people on LinkedIn who are posting things, look at Reddit, look at other social media forums, understand the unique aspects of the Canadian job market so that, you can adjust your approach. I see like a lot of things, folks putting a lot of personal information on resumes. That's not something that you should be doing here because it introduces you to bias incredibly amount. So I think taking a beat, and I understand, a lot of these people are coming, they need jobs, they need to support their family, but putting in that extra effort up front to understand the context of the Canadian market could really pay off in the long run. And I think, an extension of that, find partners and mentors. Whether it's like through maybe you came here for school, like connect with people in that network, everything that we've talked about in terms of networking through LinkedIn or any connections that you might have, really leverage the support from folks, not to like overly generalize, but I think, Canada can be like a really welcoming and warm place and people really do want to help. So I think if you find the right people, that can really kind of like guide you and give you that advice, you can ask some really insightful questions and that can, like I said, can help tie back to understanding the Canadian market. So that would be like one thing. And then the second thing is like learn to communicate the unique value your other experience has. Like I think what I've learned is there's so much value in diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences. So rather than presenting it or thinking of it as a weakness, like obviously like coming into the Canadian market, I don't have Canadian experience, so maybe I'm not as competitive. And although there isn't like, there's a basis for why you would feel that way, if you don't believe that you have a unique skill set, like how are you going to communicate that to other people? So I think get really clear on what you bring to the table. In your experience elsewhere, like it might not be experience that someone in this company has. So you're bringing something unique to the table. And if you learn how to communicate that rather than seeing it as a downfall, I think that's going to come across really clearly in conversations or interviews and can really kind of set you apart from folks.
These are some great tips. I think, especially like the communication part, because I feel like a lot of folks, they shy away from it, which is so true. Like they're like, but it was, in different country and I was doing this and that. But that's really important, especially with I think last year when they removed the Canadian requirement, the Canadian experience requirement, which was a big hindrance towards newcomers getting into the market. So I think you're right, like use that as like market it clearly so that people can connect to it. Because people who are living it, they can't connect. You have to tell them, right, this is what I did and this is how it works there. So you can't expect them to kind of like, okay, a field HR person in different country works very different than in Canadian culture. So again, I think communication is key. Thank you so much, Randy. I just want to ask you one closing question and then we are good to go. In terms of, one piece of advice that you can give to our listeners to help them in their career, what would that be? Anything that we haven't covered here or anything that you would like to share? Even if we have covered it, that's okay. What's one piece of advice you could share?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's something we've touched on through our whole conversation, but maybe haven't put into words necessarily. You hear this all the time, and until you experience it, I don't think you like understand it, but it is absolutely never too late to start again. So like, I think keep that in mind. I think our ego prevents us from trying new things sometimes. And even like I was saying, like pivoting and having to take like a position that might not be close to your career path you envision for yourself, or, you get caught in that narrative that at a certain age that you should be making a certain amount of money or have a certain title. And I understand where that stems from. And I have felt that so many times in my career. And if I had allowed that to hold me back, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think, just start again if you want to. Like, you have your entire life to work. You don't want to be working in an industry or a job or a function that you don't want to be in. And like, now's the time to do it. Because either it's going to be now or you're going to realize 5 years from now that you should have done it. So I think, yeah, that would be my piece of advice is like, don't hold yourself back from fear or because like society tells us you have to be somewhere at a certain point in time. And you can try something and hate it and start again. And like, not saying that's easy. And I think you touched on this through our conversation. Like, it's so easy for me to sit here and give advice on it. And in reality, it's so much harder, but it's worth the hard. And I think that's like what I've really learned is like the hard times are like what makes you successful.
Yeah, no, and one of the reason I wanted to bring you is because you have done it. It's just not you're just saying it. You have done it with a lot of experience because I think you have pivoted at least 3 to 4 times, which is crazy. And people do once or twice and they're like, oh, I can't, because it drains like your energy just goes as pivoting, different mindset, different thought process, different type of people. You're in accounting now in HR within HR. So crazy. Kudos to you. So I think people should definitely listen and understand what you're trying to say. And also, I think you're pretty good at sharing your tips and tricks on LinkedIn. So I would ask everyone who's tuning in to follow you on LinkedIn and learn a lot. And you can message in. I mean, that's up to you, but pretty much on LinkedIn, Randy is always posting good things, and I'm learning a lot. So, I think all of you guys who are tuning in should also do that. And then if dots connect, you never know, you guys can work down the line in the future. Thank you so much, Randy, for your insight and experience. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into HITalks podcast. Until next time, keep striving for success and crafting your unique story.